today, leading Conservative Eurosceptic MP Jacob Rees Mogg, Tony Blair's former top spin doctor Alistair Campbell, Times political columnist Rachel Sylvester, and Claire Fox from the Academy of Ideas. We're kind of operating on the assumption that the Chequers agreement, as currently constituted, will be hard enough to get through the Commons if that's what is agreed. If she dilutes it further, it becomes well nigh impossible. Is that right? Do you
Absolutely. I think what's interesting is she's almost certainly going to have to make more concessions to get a deal. But then the real negotiation becomes a negotiation within the Tory party. And we've had sort of universal condemnation of the existing proposals from left and right, Brexiteers and Remainers. Mike Penning this morning in an interview saying it's dead as a dodo, the Chequers plan. Justine Greening in our paper earlier this week was saying it's anti-democratic. And I think she's kind of got this false bravura, the Prime Minister, of saying, you know, my deal or no deal. But it's a bit like, you know, Jacob Rees-Mogg compared it to Dirty Harry, come on, punk, make my day. It's more like, actually, the cowboy who's got the gun to his head saying, you know, come on or I'll shoot. And she's lacking in all authority over her party. And, you know, she's going to have to make more concessions and then all hell will break loose.
Have you ever seen Dirty Harry?
Oh, yes, I enjoy the Clint Eastwood films.
Really?
Yes, right always triumphs
in
in
the
the end.
He's almost as right wing as you, Jay.
Sounds rather vulgar popular culture. I'm amazed to watch that sort of stuff. A former minister, Mike Penning, in the Telegraph today, has called Chequers dead as a dodo. That's the headline. There we see it in the Telegraph. I assume you agree with that?
Well, as Rachel was saying, Chequers doesn't have support from anyone. And the Prime Ministerial line that you either have this or nothing is tinged with arrogance, that to say you do as I say or we're going to do nothing else is not strong leadership, it's stubbornness, and I don't think it's the right way to approach Chequers.
Does it suit your purpose for Chequers to be dead as a dodo, if it is?
My purpose being to get a people's vote
yes.
on the deal. It does, because, in fact, in Rachel's paper the other day, there was a wonderful cartoon of Theresa May sort of standing like this, looking desperate. There were two roads. One was no deal, the other was Chequers, and behind her was the people's vote. And she's trying to stop that, because I think she knows that's where it's going. Where I completely agree with Jacob Rees-Mogg is that Chequers is the worst of all worlds. I think that Theresa May has got herself into position, because I think she's negotiated this from day one so badly, being pushed around, frankly, too much by her right wing. I think she's got herself to a position now where, without any real political strength or support at home, she's going to a bunch of European leaders who've been pretty rock solid throughout and giving them this binary choice when they know she's not strong enough to deliver it. So I think
So you two are on the same side?
Well, we're on the same side about Chequers, but where we're completely not on the same side is in our views about where this can now lead. And I really do believe the momentum for a people's vote really is growing, and it's growing very, very quickly. And if the Labour Party doesn't move next week, I think they're making a massive mistake.
Claire, maybe Chequers has few friends, either among the Remain or the Leave siders. We've seen here. But, you know, if she does get a deal along Chequers' line, she may have to make some changes, but maybe not too substantive. And she then puts this to Parliament, and perhaps the CBI says, yeah, this isn't too bad, it's free movement of trade and goods. Other folks pile in as well. You could say, suddenly it could get friends.
Well, when you say it could get friends, I think this is the difficulty, is that it's being discussed at the moment, actually, in the very technocratic managerial terms that people rejected in relation to the Brexit vote in the first place, which is politics being done behind closed doors, or kind of counting the numbers and trying to do deals and negotiating over here. What will not, where it will make no friends, are those people who voted Brexit. And regardless of where we are on that, they did have some sense of where we were going, and it certainly wasn't Chequers. And the problem now is, as we say, I mean, Alistair, you said that Theresa had been pushed around by the far right, and that, you know, if only.
No, the right of her party.
No, but if only. It was what I was going to say, because where she is being pushed around is undoubtedly by the EU. Now, I'm not criticising them for doing it. That's why I wanted to get out. That's what they do. They are a particular type of institution which I don't support, and they are wielding their heavyweight power over Britain in relation to getting out, which is a reasonable thing for them to do. I don't ask for any favours. But we're behaving as though we want to kind of desperately hang on the coattails. And, of course, I think if you're, as it were, an ordinary voter, you're looking at this and just thinking, this is the whole point. We want it out of this mess.
I don't agree with that. I think that people, look, some people are looking like that. I think a lot of people are looking at this and thinking, even if they voted Leave, we didn't vote for this chaos. We didn't vote for this mess. We were told it was going to be straightforward. And the polling, I tell you, for Labour seats, in Labour seats, it is shifting, and it's shifting fast. And I think that's because people are realising that the people who fought for this all their lives don't know how to deliver it. And I don't feel sorry for Theresa May, because I think she's a hopeless Prime Minister and been hopeless on this. But watching her on the Panorama programme the other night, she clearly knows this is going to damage the country she leads.
You say opinions going your way, but John Curtis, on polling matters, the man to whom we all defer, has studied the Survation, BMG, YouGov and the Comrades, the big pollsters. And his conclusion is that there is a small majority for vote Remain. There was a small majority for vote Remain in the polls before the referendum. Actually, it was a big majority. But his conclusion is there is no consistent evidence that support for Remain has increased further.
I don't accept that, and I do.
Don't accept John Curtis.
I accept John Curtis's data, but I don't accept that it's not a shift. And I think if you look at all the latest polling, and you, the People's Vote campaign, we were very, very fortunate to be given a very generous donation, and we've done a lot of polling. And in every sector, in every region, there has been a shift. And the thing is this is where there is no question yet to be put. And where the big shift is happening is in support for the idea of another say. And I think that once you get into the possibility of Jacob and his colleagues in the Labour Party voting down this deal, then all bets are off. And once it goes back to the people, I think the shift will accelerate.
Well, I'll come to that in a minute. Let me come to Jacob Rees Mogg here for a moment, just to understand and establish your position. We know you don't like the Chequers agreement as it is. I assume you'll like it even less if it's further diluted. But where's your blueprint for what Brexit should be? I thought you were going to bring one out.
Chequers is not Brexit. It's not properly leaving the European Union. It means you take their rules and you're still de facto.
But where's your plan?
Our proposals have been a solution which we launched last week to the Irish border question.
Isn't a solution.
Well, hold on. You say that. It's been criticised, but nobody's pointed out that any of our facts are wrong. And what we did with that paper is we looked at the EU's rules in other places and how it got its border to work in other places, and say, on existing EU rules and precedents, how can you have a border without physical infrastructure
So when,
at the border?
when Barnier says that leaving the single market and customs union makes border checks unavoidable,
the question is whether you have physical inspection at the border. It's the
and
avoiding
this imaginary
Hold on. The issue isn't just the Irish border. You were supposed to be bringing out a blueprint that would cover the waterfront of what your vision of Brexit would look like. What happened to that?
We've done a number of things. We've supported the Economists for Free Trade's very important paper. Patrick Minford, very distinguished economist. No, he's got a group of economists around him.
But that's
and
not
Roger
your
Buchel
blueprint.
and so on.
That's supporting a different group. I mean, you've been thinking about this since prep school.
Well,
and we still don't know what your idea of a Brexit Britain would look like.
Our idea is completely clear. It is twofold. One is that leaving on world trade terms is not something to be frightened of. That there are international...
economy.
Oh, that's the Bank of England's funny figures, backed by the Treasury, which got every forecast wrong recently, and said we would have an increase in unemployment.
Yours, but not theirs.
Well, you should look at the overall context of what you can do when you leave. You can reduce the price of food, clothing and footwear, boost to the least well-off in society, because you take the tariffs off. So we've supported Economists for Free Trade on the blue...
Why haven't you brought this all together to provide your own blueprint rather than cherry-picking various things that you happen to like? I mean, if you don't like the Chequers agreement, surely it is incumbent on you to provide a clear and comprehensive alternative.
Wasn't it Isaac Newton who made the comment about standing on the shoulders of giants? If we're standing on the shoulders of giants who have done this work, which we can draw
Who are the giants?
The Economists for Free Trade.
Patrick Minford. We're putting our future in the hands of Patrick Minford.
Patrick Minford, who got the euro right, who got the exchange rate mechanism right, when the whole consensus as economists were
so
wrong.
Your entire intellectual case for Brexit is based on Patrick
Giants, plural. We've got...
Who's the other one?
I mean, surely, isn't the truth in the end is you couldn't really agree? I mean, at one
No,
stage,
that's not right.
you were getting submissions that we'd build a nuclear missile shield.
That's completely irrelevant. We are based...
Well, I know that, but you've got a submission on
completely
that.
irrelevant.
You were also going to create a rapid reaction force for the Falklands.
This has nothing to do with Brexit.
I understand that too.
Why
Do you want immigration to go up or down?
Well,
I think that's the really fascinating split within the Brexiteers.
come-
That there are the sort of free market liberals and then the sort of Nigel
Yeah.
Farage nativists. And
I'll come to that. Just it's important to answer Mr. Neal's question first. Our proposal has long been to have a Canada Plus style free trade agreement, workable because there is now a solution to the Irish problem. Workable, hold on,
There
I
isn't
didn't
a
interrupt
solution.
you, so do be
There is
patient.
not a solution.
Workable because there is a solution that nobody's been able to criticise the facts of. They may not
Why are
like
they not
it,
discussing it in
but they
San
haven't
Francisco?
gone to
Why
the
are they not
facts
even
of
discussing it?
Well,
It's
the
been
Prime Minister,
taken apart.
because the Prime Minister is sticking to her proposals, and workable because it's been offered by the EU, the most comprehensive trade deal with any country ever, based on existing EU precedents, which fits in with its mantra that it's a rules-based
saying-
organisation.
All right, no, hold on.
But I must answer
Hold on,
Rachel's
let me
question.
talk me through this now. So you vote against the Chequers agreement, or a variety thereof, when it comes before the Commons as part of the withdrawal deal. And supposing enough of you do so, that the Chequers deal, if I can call it that, doesn't get through the Commons, what happens next?
We leave on World Trade Organisation terms.
Well,
Does Parliament have to vote for that?
But,
No.
well, let me just get you down on
But
that,
it-
because it is true that the fallback position would be we would leave with no deal on WTO
terms.
or rules. But that's the formality. The House of Commons, 5 out of 6 MPs in the House of Commons, are against leaving on no deal.
But
They'll stop that
How?
by voting.
What legislative mechanism is available to them?
Well, they can just vote, and if the government ignores it, there will
You
be a
think you
major
have the
constitutional
you think you have
crisis.
the mandate for that?
Let me explain the position in the House of Commons. The government of the day controls the timetable in the House of Commons. There is a provision for a motion under the Withdrawal Act that is in neutral terms and is therefore not a binding motion. There would have to be a statutory instrument to delay the date of the implementation of the withdrawal bill, and the government would have to ask to extend Article 50.
Right.
This requires a complete U-turn by the government. It would require the
Which
government...
you'd make if you defeated a
No,
deal.
the government...
Why would you not be forced to make a U-turn?
Because the law is already established saying that we will leave on the
But
29th of March.
hold on.
Constitutional
There is no...
Alistair, no, hold on.
There is
You're
no...
saying that a weak and divided government, which then loses its vote in the Commons over the deal it has struck, and then ignores a vote
There's no vote.
not to leave on no deal.
There is no vote in the House of Commons.
So
Where is this motion coming from? Who is putting forward this motion?
You don't
MPs
think,
can
you don't
put
think that
forward
in the
motions.
political and parliamentary and constitutional chaos that unfolds, that Parliament will not need to reassert itself and to have a
Well,
process that
Parliament-
takes this
Parliament
forward.
operates-
So you're saying we basically just go out on a minority vote
No, we go out on...
of you and your friends.
Not a bit. We go out on...
The country's not going to have it, Jacob.
We go out on an act of Parliament
All right,
passed by the UK
me
Parliament
ask
and
Rachel.
signed into law.
Is-
It's very clear. And the British people
the
voted
legal
for it.
position
Not
is,
vote for that.
Jacob is right on the legal process. But is he really right on the political reality in the circumstances we're talking about?
no, because I think there would end up being a parliamentary vote of some kind. If you end up with a no
which
deal,
standing
there's no
order?
parliamentary majority for a no
Under
deal.
which standing order do you
There
get
would
this
be
vote?
there'd be the motion on the meaningful vote.
That's
if
a
that was
take-note motion.
That's a take-note motion. If that's voted down, the
Unamendable.
government has promised to come back with another proposal,
It's-
and for MPs to can then have a say on that.
So,
Established
let-
as
let-
take-note
And remember,
Claire,
Piers.
let me hear
Sorry.
Claire.
So, at the moment, every single proposal, that's what I don't understand, genuinely, from you, Alistair. Every time anyone tries to come up with a solution, you say, it won't work, it can't work, it won't work, that won't work, that won't work, that can't work. So you end up in a situation where you just said it won't wash with the country. Well, I'll tell you what doesn't wash with the country, which is to be told that what they wanted to do won't work, that technically you can't do it. Now, I do think there'll be more chaos in the Commons if we go out. I think that will be true. I think that to a certain extent we shouldn't anticipate anything less than that. This was a historic vote for a change. It wasn't a, can we minimise the amount of disruption there could be and everyone carry on like normal. I do not think it's going to lead to catastrophe, but I do think that we'll what won't wash with the country, as you've referred to them, and I do think there is a mood shift, is this constantly being told that nothing can change, and that if we do anything, it will lead to catastrophe.
I'm not saying that.
No, but you've said every single. I mean, it's not that I think that Patrick Minford's a great economist. I'm not saying he's not. I'm just saying the thing is, But what I want to say is that, saying I've got my set of economists versus these set of economists, there has been a certain amount of irresponsibility of those people who have not planned as to how we get it out. Right. However, we can just leave. And we should just leave.
But I'm trying to work out the circumstances. Hold on,
yes,
I'm
but we can just walk away. I mean, it is possible.
What
You're
is
making
the
it sound
answer?
as though it's not.
I want to hear from Jacob Rees Mogg, because we're going to lose him in a bit. What is the answer to Rachel's question about migration? More or less?
I think migration should be a single system for the world. It should not be free movement or particular benefits for the EU. We should focus on skilled migration rather than unskilled migration. I think unskilled migration has the greatest effect on the standard of living of the least well-off in our society.
Would you be happy to see the overall level go up? Do you think
I don't think the number is the key thing, actually. I think
so you would be happy to see it go up?
Well,
a lot of your colleagues wouldn't.
But where there's the risk is on unskilled labour, because that is the bit that creates the tensions and affects people's standards of living. If there are lots of French people living in London working in the city, that doesn't cause any social tension, disruption, and is economically beneficial. When unskilled work is not available and the price of unskilled labour is kept down because of mass movements, that's a real social problem.
I do think it is important to note that people didn't, despite the idea that people voted as nativists to keep the immigrants out, that's not what really happened. What people wanted was a sense that there was some control. And I think in all of the polls that Alice says, there's a much more generous spirit towards, it's not an anti-immigrant feeling. It's a, can somebody not tell us we have to have this or not have that?
All right, we've got Alistair here, and he's been very vocal in this campaign for...
No, I just want to deal with...
What do you call it, a people's vote? Now, I want to get on to this. You want a people's vote, that's what you call it. Was June 2016 a people's vote? It was. So you want a second people's vote. When would you have it?
That is going to depend on what emerges from the chaos that would ensue if Jacob's successful and we're successful if you like, in defeating the Chequers plan, or if the European Union, if you can't make a deal.
So roughly when?
Listen, I think you can, and John Kerr set this out the day, we can ask for an extension of time. I don't think it has to be done. I thought Michael Gove let the cat out of the bag the other day when he basically, the blind Brexit is what they think they can get over the line.
So you couldn't do it before the end of the Article 50 process?
I think you would almost certainly need an extension.
What would the question be?
I think the question, again, would depend on the circumstances. I would like there to be the option to remain on the ballot paper. If her deal gets defeated in Parliament, I think it becomes impossible for her to put that as part of the deal. It may be that Jacob then has to say, well, let's fight to get no deal on the ballot paper. So at this stage, I can't answer that question. Parliament and the Electoral Commission would have to decide that. But also, can I just do... I wasn't saying, Claire, that nothing can go right, and nor was I saying that the country won't wear Brexit and a lot of people still want it to happen. I'm saying what they won't wear is a very small group of very vocal right-wing MPs saying our version is what you voted for, we're a very small minority in Parliament, and because Theresa May's lost on Chequers, that is what's going to happen.
And particularly when it's supposed to be about parliamentary sovereignty and people taking back control. That's
but
the
let's
weirdness.
come back to this referendum, because you can't tell us what the question would be.
I can tell you what I would like the question to be.
Which is what?
I would like it to be remain against either his plan or Theresa May's plan if she gets it.
So you want to rerun the referendum?
No, it's completely different.
So you want to have another vote?
So at this stage,
I want to have another vote,
the same.
including on what's happened since Jacob, where your promises have been exposed.
You want to reverse the last referendum result?
I want.
That's it. It's bad loser status, isn't it?
No, I'm sorry, it's not Jacob.
We
I
voted.
want the public.
And we then had a general election where both the main parties backed and said they would implement the referendum. So you've had two votes already. How many more votes do you want?
Let me just
one until you win.
Let me deal with the general election point. 80% of people voted Tory or Labour. Millions of people, myself included, voted Labour in part to stop Theresa May getting a mandate for a hard Brexit. So don't pretend we all voted for Brexit. And on the referendum, yes, we lost. But so many things you promised have not happened. So many things you said would not happen are happening. People are already losing on their living standards. Companies are already relocating. Nobody voted to be poorer. Nobody voted for this chaos and this mess. And the public are changing their minds. And you are now on Project Frit because you know the will of the people is changing.
Well, that is not true, as John Curtis, who is a more distinguished psephologist than either of
well,
us.
take this and read what's happening.
The only time I disagreed with John Curtis, I was wrong, and I think it's wise to follow what he has to say.
But you cannot pretend. You can say that is what the people voted for. They did not vote for what you're putting
forward. They voted
forward.
to leave, and that's still resonant within the polling.
No, you have to let
But it's really important that you say that there were things that the Leave campaign said that haven't happened. Wow, nothing compared to those said by the Remain campaign.
Second referendum
Jacob, we just want to rerun the referendum.
I want to ask you
that's
this,
what you're aiming for.
I'm trying to establish the practicality of this, because it would seem to me now that you've conceded that to get a second referendum, you would need to extend Article 50. That's
likely.
One. And you would need...
Which, by the way, I think the European Union would do.
But we don't know.
I think
and you would need primary legislation from the government.
Absolutely.
How is that going to come about?
Well, as I say, there will be chaos. And I think
so it doesn't come about.
Listen, there's a wonderful article in this wonderful newspaper.
Oh, stop plugging yourself.
The New European. It's not myself. Gitto Harry, ex of Boris Johnson.
But what's the answer to my question?
He's suggesting it might be Theresa May. It might be Theresa May that says the only way I can now bring the country back together
but
is for her to do the people's vote.
I know.
Labour can change.
I know we've
Labour can push.
Learned with your help not to take politicians at their word. But Mrs. May has established that her position is there will be no second referendum.
There was going to be no snap election.
No second referendum.
No snap
What's
election.
Labour's position?
I wish I knew. I wish I knew. We've got Labour's conference coming up.
So without Labour, you cannot get a second referendum?
At the moment, yes.
OK.
But let me just explain. On the Labour Party position, we've got the Labour Party conference coming up. Jeremy Corbyn, I think I'm right in saying 62% of members. Is that what he got? Which we were told was absolutely overwhelming. Surely, if there is clear evidence, as there is, Brexit shift, Labour seats, and Labour members now, if you get to, say, 70%, even 75% of Labour members saying we want a people's vote, are the Labour Party really going to say, no, we're sticking where we are, we're only going to do it through a general election? And if there's a general election, what is their position on Brexit?
All right, well, good luck with changing Mr Corbyn's mind.
Well, that's what we're planning for this week.
Rachel, you've been listening. We've got to lose Jacob shortly. He has less important things to do. What do you make of it all?
I think the momentum is building for the people's vote, second referendum, whatever you call it.
And if there was chaos in Parliament, that would give it legs?
I think the route to it would be through a sort of parliamentary deadlock where MPs, a bit like with Laws Reform, MPs can't agree on any of the options. But unlike Laws Reform, this can't just be shunted into the, long grass. That you have to reach a conclusion. So I think there's a momentum question. Whether or not it gets there is yet to be seen.
Right. And so we bid farewell to Jacob Rees Mogg at this point.